This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
So she's like, that's a lot for me to have to listen to. And I was like,
you had said you listen to everything, which is why I asked.
Yeah. She's like, but she's got to go back and re-listen. I was like,
I mean, for the record, she doesn't have to invest as much time as she's going to.
B, she has to. I told her to get on her job.
Did you really tell her she has to re-listen to everything?
Yeah. I said, start listening back to it. I was like, you drive a lot, so why the hell not?
Very packed show today. I try not to go into an episode of the Practice Squad with this many things I want to talk about because we end up recording for 3 hours. I couldn't decide if I was going to say 2 or 3. I went with 3.
It would be closer to 3.
Yeah. But we have a lot we got to get to today. Supposedly, Michigan is interested in bringing Harbaugh back at a reduced salary. I need to know if that's unforgivable. Also, did I do the responsible thing or not? And before that all, Darrel Bevell getting a win in his first game as the head coach of the Lions, the interim head coach, of course. A guy, by the way, Stroz, I love the hiring of him as an offensive coordinator. I like a lot of things about him. I want to ask the question, could he convince you? As the Lions sit, Stroz, one freaking game out of the playoffs, could he convince you he's the guy to be the head coach? But first and foremost, last week we kind of teased a middle segment that we're going to do. I think we kind of teased it like it was coming up this week. It's not. Stroz's girlfriend is going to join us and talk about some of her favorite segments we've ever done. The reason I brought this idea up, Stroz, is because you have told me she's listened to everything we've ever done. I didn't see this as a project for her. I saw this as what segments come to memory? Because I have some that come to memory for me, and I've been doing this with you for a while, but I have quite a few that come to mind that I like. I didn't intend for her to go back and do homework. Stroz, this is episode 49, and you're telling me before we start recording that you're forcing her to re-listen to what is probably, 45 hours of content to pick out her favorite segments?
Absolutely. Get on your job. Do some show prep. If you're going to come on here, do some show prep.
I think
and then
that is
bring your list and
offense.
let's discuss it.
I think that could end a relationship, and it's totally justified.
Look, here's the thing. I think, if anything, it's just going to make it stronger. She loves our show. She thinks
it'll
it's
be better
great.
for us. I'm not saying that. But, to make her do that is not fair.
She went back. She had I made her go back and start listening to the very first episode that you can only find on the iHeartRadio app.
I hope that it is expected of you now. You owe her 45 hours of something you have no interest in.
Look, man, I've already been stuck watching a couple of those Hallmark Christmas movies that she loves so much.
45 hours worth, or it's not a fair trade.
I mean, oh my God, 45 hours worth. Somebody hang me now. But look, she'll get it back. She'll get it back some way, somehow. Look, quid pro quo, right? That's what it is. So she'll get it back at some point.
But that's a segment I'm super excited to do in the future. I'm excited to relive some segments that maybe we've forgotten about.
Early returns on what she's listened to thus far. She sent me a text message the other night as she was making her way through a couple of them. She was like, also, you were so much vulgar and douchey in your old podcast.
Which you've said.
Yes. And she also enjoys that Friday Night Lights is one of your favorite all-time shows.
My favorite, period.
Oh, your favorite. I'm sorry. Your number one. She tries to get me to watch that crap, and I'm just like, I'm not doing that.
Why?
Just not doing it. Because I don't have the time nor the interest to watch something from, what was that, the early 2000s?
I think it was closer to 2010.
Okay, cool. I just don't have time, nor do I care that much.
Do you watch any TV?
I used to really be into all of the NCISs. There's 3 or 4 of them. Since I've moved back home, I just don't have the time, or I don't have the ability to sit down and just take them in. I haven't watched one of those since December of last year. So I just don't have the ability to do it. And
if you ever want to watch a show where every episode isn't the exact same, there's a lot of them out there, shows. In fact, I would say tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands.
It has a formula I like.
I mean, NCIS is a fine show, but I can't believe that's the one you come to. Anyways, we got some sports to talk about. I didn't watch any of the Lions game this week, and it wasn't in any sort of protest or anything. I had a friend in town who got in town Sunday, and I wanted to offer the option to him to go to the Texans game. I didn't want to go, but he's in town from Michigan. I know things aren't open there. So I offered him the option, and he said yes. So I was like, okay, it'll be a good time, even though it's not really what I wanted to do. And the Lions are trailing the whole game. I don't know why. I'm not paying attention. But then all of a sudden I see they freaking win. And believe me, I was rooting against them. But then you look at it, and the Lions sit one game out of an NFC wildcard spot. And admittedly, that's not a good record. But when you look at what the Lions have the rest of the way, whether or not you root for them, Stroz, I got to tell you, Darrel Bevell is auditioning for a job. I don't think he's going to get it. But you play Green Bay, Tennessee, Tampa Bay, and Minnesota. I would say comfortably probably comfortably 3 of those teams are going to be playoff teams. Maybe Minnesota finds their way in. If Darrel Bevell finds his way into the playoffs in that stretch of games, I don't know, man. I don't know how you don't hire him, especially given what we've seen this team be under Patricia. And don't get me wrong here. I'm not saying I'm rooting for that because it's scary to keep a coordinator who was under such an awful head coach. But we've seen this team be trash. And if somehow they were to find their way in the playoffs, it means Darrel Bevell did something that I think is fair to call special.
Do you realize our entire podcast has basically streamed the entire lifespan of Darrel/Darren Bevell as the Lions OC and now
that
head
is
coach?
Funny. You're right.
I think our very first episode was discussing him and what he brings to the
I
to
like
the table.
the Darrel Bevell hire. You wouldn't call him anything but Darren.
That's right. And then until he brought me around. And you know what? To bring this all full circle, there is absolutely no way I want this man as our head coach. I don't care if he gets us into the playoffs. I don't care. And I say us like I'm on the team. If he gets the Lions into the playoffs, there is no way I want him as the head coach. What I want this organization to do, good organizations do, or what real organizations do. You can look no further than your organization right there in Houston with what the Texans are doing. Going out, getting a committee to go and find their next general manager who can then go find the next head coach.
I would caution you of ever pointing to the organization here in Houston. Tony Dungy came out today. He was asked by Dan Patrick if he was part of the committee to pick the Texans head coach, and he said he was on one phone call, that he was not a part of any committee. So that may not actually even be accurate. And here's where I struggle. I refuse to believe if Darrel Bevell were to win out, let's say, and they would make the postseason in that scenario.
Yes, they would.
I don't know if
Absolutely.
it's a given. They would.
I believe it's almost 100%. If they win out, they're in.
So if they were to win out and the Lions fire Darrel Bevell, I think somebody hires him as a head coach.
I wouldn't be surprised about that. Now, this is the one thing I would say, right? After you get your general manager in place and after you get your head coach in place, I wouldn't mind him being brought back as the OC if that head coach felt that the job he's done, not under Matt Patricia, but as his own head coach, was good enough. If he was able to call the offense the way he's seen fit. Look, in the area locally, Robert Saleh is getting a ton of praise, and just about everybody wants him as the next head coach. He's a great defensive mind. So what I'm telling you is if he was to come on as the head coach and basically run that defense to give all to Bevell in that offense, I think I'd be okay with that. But I really don't want any holdovers. My big issue is I don't necessarily want any holdovers to the old regime. I want a complete enema. I want to gut this thing, and I want to start fresh.
It's funny because I struggle with saying that's the right move. If they come out and they beat the Packers, Titans, Buccaneers, and Vikings, they go on a 5-game winning streak, which Stroz would be the best 5-game stretch of Lions football since I have started watching them. I can't say my lifetime, but I've been watching since the mid-2000s. There is no way the Lions have had a better stretch than going 5-0 against teams like that since 2005. I have a hard time saying the right move would be to let him go. That being said, I can respect not wanting to have holdovers, wanting a fresh start. I can respect that. But it's funny because I almost struggle with hearing you say, I want a fresh start, but I could live with him as the offensive coordinator.
Mm-hmm. Because it's coming from a different place.
Would you believe that, though? I don't know that you would. I think that you would say he's being pressured into this decision just like Patricia was early on or Caldwell was.
No, see, it's funny that you phrased it like that because I haven't thought about it that way. Okay? So I haven't thought about it like that. my thought process is, if the Lions can get this right, if Sheila Hamp can get this right, if Rod Wood can, for the most part, stay out of this, because there's already some speculation about him having a little bit too much say in what's going to take place with the next general manager. And it sounds like that's scaring off some potential candidates to take over the next GM role. If that general manager comes in and says, hey, this guy's going to be our head coach, and then that head coach goes through a list of candidates and Bevell's one of those list of candidates and decides to go with him, I'm okay with that. It's if you hear stuff coming from the top, if you hear Sheila Hamp's like, yeah, we need to keep Darrel Bevell. We had a great 5-game stretch with him as our offensive coordinator / head coach. Or if you hear Rod Wood say something along the lines of,
hold on, because I don't want the owner saying you have to keep the coach.
Right.
What if Sheila brings in a GM who says, look, Darrel Bevell's been impressive. Darrel Bevell's been a long-time offensive coordinator who's had success at a lot of stops. And when he got a 5-game stretch, he did something this franchise just doesn't do. We got to let him have a real shot.
If by real shot means I want you to take a good hard look at him, and if you decide he's the right guy, then I'm okay with it.
So the hard part is convincing you that this is coming from the GM.
Yes, that's okay. That's where I think everything has to start with this football team. I don't need it coming from the owner. I think we need the owner just to kind of stay out of this. Just go make the selection for your general manager. Let your general manager report to you. And if you have to fire your general manager, that's your job. Until that time, though, stay out of all football operations.
I'll tell you what, Stroz, I actually think we're kind of in the same place, because don't get me wrong, I think the idea of keeping Darrel Bevell, regardless of what he does, is scary. Mm-hmm. The idea of the holdover, no matter what, is scary, because I don't think it works often. I don't think that means you can never do it, but I do think it's important to note Darrel Bevell was not the original offensive coordinator for Matt Patricia. And I need to say this, too. I need to see what he does. I didn't watch the Chicago game. Darrel Bevell does a lot of things right on offense. He's very big on pre-snap motion. He had previously been very big on throwing early in the possession, not waiting till second and third down. That has stopped this year, but it's tough to judge how much of that is a Matt Patricia thing and how much of that is a Darrel Bevell thing.
So what I'll tell you from this game, because I know you didn't get a chance to watch it, they threw deep a lot more.
Which is a Darrel Bevell thing.
Right. A lot more than what Patricia did. I think they threw a little bit more on first down.
Which is big. See, that's what I want out of my offensive play caller. I want you to throw on first down, and I want you to use pre-snap motions. Those are the two biggest things. Also, a lot of play action. Darrel Bevell's a big fan of that. Mm-hmm.
And it seemed like they called run plays, I want to say responsibly, knowing what you have in the backfield and then playing to their power. And I think he put the offense in decent positions.
So would you say you were impressed by him?
I was impressed that they won this game. I was impressed that the players kept fighting, because this game could have been lost. There was a bad Matt Stafford interception when the game was kind of on the line.
That's funny, because he had a really good day by numbers, didn't he?
He did. But that interception came at like one of the worst times, and they almost lost it. But the defense came up huge for them, and it allowed them to go back down the field and score a touchdown. So it's one of those things. This defense looked, I don't want to say remarkably better, because Chicago's not a good football team, and they beat they beat a football team that is struggling in their own right, but it was impressive that the team and the players didn't give up. I think if Matt Patricia, and I think the one thing you can say about this game this past weekend, if Matt Patricia was the head coach, they lose this game hands down.
I didn't watch, but I believe it. And let's be clear here, I do think this conversation lives in fantasy land.
Yeah,
it's very hard to see them winning out or even going 3-1 and getting into the playoffs. And 3-1 might get it done, by the way. It might get them in, especially with the games they have.
Looking real quick at the standings. So you've got Seattle, who's 8-4. They're in the 5th spot. Tampa Bay's in the 6th spot at 7-5. Minnesota is 6-6 in the 7th spot, followed behind by Arizona, who is 6-6. And then the Bears, the Lions and the Bears just split this season, 5-7. Detroit is now 5-7, sitting in the 10th spot.
I think 3-1 with a loss to Tampa Bay gets you in.
Yeah,
not Tampa Bay. I'm sorry, Tennessee. Because you have tiebreaker over Arizona.
Yes,
you would in this case have tiebreaker over Tampa Bay should it be necessary. And I don't know if you would have tiebreaker over Minnesota or Chicago, because you'd be split in the head-to-head. But they would only have a couple. I think all but 2 of their wins would come in conference, which is the secondary tiebreaker, they look really good. So
here's the thing too, and you would have the tiebreaker over Arizona as well.
Right. So we're probably living in fantasy land. But that being said, should Darrel Bevell take us to fantasy land, he would convince me he's the guy. And I think it would be very hard for me to be convinced so heavily that he's the guy that I would be upset if they moved on. Because like you, I don't want that to be a mandate. I don't want the next GM to be hired knowing Darrel Bevell's the head coach. What I do think is very possible is Darrel Bevell could coach this team to a point where I say, he deserves to be heavily in the conversation by the next general manager.
And I like that. And I'm in lockstep with you on that. I can't have the organization telling the next guy that they put in charge that, hey, this is your head coach.
What if you want a playoff game? Again, we're already in fantasy land. Like,
shit, man.
This is as unreal as it gets. Like, I'm riding a dragon as I ask you the question. If he won a playoff game, could he fully sell you that he's the guy?
God.
You want to talk about full circle? There could be no greater full circle than Darrel Bevell winning a playoff game after I told you, a couple of years ago how much I loved him as an offensive coordinator.
And I refused to get his name right. Which, by the way, that still comes up when I'm trying to write something down. I want to put Darren instead of Darrell. I
think sometimes you accidentally say Darren when we're talking about him.
I think I do too. Like in my brain, because that segment was so heated between us, it was so hot that it's just burned into my brain now. So it's funny. If he won a playoff game, would I get on board? Man, you are stacking this deck.
That's what you get to do in fantasy land.
I know.
I don't have any restrictions.
I know.
Stroz. The Lions win the Super Bowl. Darrel Bevell's coming back, right?
If he wins a playoff game. I'm going to tell you no. I'm going to tell you no. He's in the consideration, but I'm going to tell you no because I've already seen this done. I've seen this done, though, right? I mean, maybe not winning a playoff game, but I've seen this done where the GM comes in and he's forced to keep this head coach. And we've seen how that played out. And I know he won a playoff game, but
is there no limit?
There's no limit. Is it the Super Bowl? Yeah, he wins the Super Bowl, he's coming back.
Okay.
He takes this squad. He takes this beat up ragtag squad. This squad that me and you both think is inept and doesn't have a ton of talent, right? Because of the way the general manager and the old coach basically stack the deck for this team. If he is able to he doesn't even have to win them Super Bowl. If he can get them to the Super Bowl and they lose, I don't care if they get blown out, but I just wanted
to find your line.
It's getting to the Super Bowl. There's my line.
So, and that's why for me, if they were to win out, I don't know if 3-1 would make me be heavily in, but if they were to win out, it would take such a strong finish with a group of guys I don't think is that good that I'd be in. But for the most part, we're in the same general area, despite not totally sounding like it. We got to have a pretty good conversation while actually mostly agreeing.
I wasn't really sure where this was going to go, really and truly.
I didn't know either. I was very curious. This whole show, I said we got a lot planned today. I'm going to love to hear your thoughts on any possibility of Jim Harbaugh coming back. But first, had a friend in town I don't know what to call it. It's not weekend. He got in on Sunday.
When did he go home? Wednesday?
So what happened is he flew in Sunday. He was supposed to fly in Saturday, but Spirit changed his flight.
Good old Spirit.
So he got in on Sunday, stayed here all day Sunday, all day Monday, all day Tuesday. Wednesday, he rented a car and drove to Dallas to hang out with another friend. And then he's flying home, I think, Sunday of next weekend.
Okay.
But so Sunday comes around, pick him up, head to the Texans game. He got in 10 o'clock. The game's at noon, so we didn't have a ton of time. Get to the Texans game. And I'm feeling mostly fine during the Texans game. Towards the back end, I'm starting to feel a little meh. But I hadn't really eaten all day. It's, outside a little warm. Didn't think anything of it.
Were you drinking?
No.
Okay.
No, honestly, I didn't think so. I walked all the way back to my car, and we might have walked a half mile, 3/4 of a mile, but nothing more than that. And I just felt so tired. So it made me go a little bit this isn't great. But we went out to eat.
Did you start thinking that maybe you had the vid? I know every time I get a little bit sick, I'm like, oh my God, is this
Here's what I would tell you. 90% of what I ended up feeling the symptoms didn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Neither did the timing, because the last time I'd only been out once in the last couple weeks, and it was a couple days ago.
Yeah.
So no, not really. But so we go out to eat, and this is where like it becomes very clear that I'm sick. I have 2 tacos. That's it. And I had not eaten yet that day. It's like 5 o'clock, and I was so stuffed after 2 tacos. And it was like, okay, something's wrong. The fact that I can't eat my 3rd taco, like my stomach is full. And that's how I can kind of tell it wasn't COVID. I had no breathing issues, not really fatigued, tired like you are when you're sick, but not really, like the normal heavy fatigue or soreness. It was all like I had a stomach bug. But we get back to my place that night, and I start to notice I'm feeling the shivers. So I checked my temperature, 102 on Sunday night. And there's a couple angles to ask here, but really what I want to know is what would you do? Like at this point, how do you handle that? He's here Monday and Tuesday. He's literally here to see me. So like, how do you handle, do you take him around? Do you just keep going about it like nothing's wrong? Like, I don't know what I owe him. Because seriously, like me, after having 102 fever, normally I just lay down in bed all day and not do anything. But it's tough when you have a friend in town.
So I think in a situation like this, I think you did the responsible thing as a good friend. And I think you walking the streets, possibly infecting everybody in Houston with 102 fever.
Yet. All you know is about Sunday.
That's true.
Sunday,
that's all I know.
I didn't do anything until once I knew I was sick, you don't know how I handled it.
Well, you're absolutely right. I'm assuming, and apparently when you assume, you make an ass out of you and me, but I'm just going to make an ass out of myself because I just don't care.
You're assuming on Monday and Tuesday I continue to do stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I feel like you owe your friend this because
that's what I'm asking because I don't know. Honestly, I don't know what the answer is, and I would love answers on Twitter. Like in this situation, what? Yeah,
please tweet us.
Yeah, at Brandon Riley _ Adam R Stroz. It's Adam R Stroz, right?
Yes.
It's been a while since I've said that.
It has been a minute. I feel you owe it to your friend. Like your friend flew into Houston. I feel like you've got to put your best game face on. I think what you end up doing, right, is maybe Sunday night you call it an early night, go to sleep, maybe sleep in a little bit on Monday. Did you work on Monday, Tuesday?
My boss Sunday night because I planned on working. Like I didn't feel good, but I felt pretty confident it wasn't COVID. So I texted him and said, "Hey, really not feeling well tonight. I still plan on coming in, but just wanted to give you the heads up in advance."
Mm-hmm. So did you end up working on Monday, Tuesday?
Covered?
Okay.
On Monday. And said, hey, just like give me an update tomorrow how you're doing.
Okay.
So I ended up getting Monday off and working Tuesday still.
Okay. So I think in your situation, you sleep in, and when you wake up, you kind of check with yourself, you check with him, and then you put your best game face on, and you take him around the city, and you guys have a blast on your off day. Ferris Bueller's day off. In this case, Little B's day off, and Little B just goes and runs ragged. And then on Tuesday, you get up, you go to work, you come back, and you take him out for a good time.
I have a responsibility to my work who's giving me Monday off to feel better, to rest and be ready Tuesday.
Yeah, no, but your work doesn't know that you're going out. It's okay.
We're recording this. This is public. They could listen.
Yeah, I mean, are they?
So what happened was, honestly, I woke up Monday and felt totally fine. This is honestly, I'm still battling it a little bit. I don't even, you probably wouldn't have guessed that.
No, not at all.
No, I mostly feel pretty good now. Like I'm definitely mostly over it. I mean, I'm eating more than 2 tacos a day now. But
how many pizzas?
I'm not. So I actually don't think my stomach can handle pizza right now. That's basically what I mean by I'm still not 100%. Like I kind of have to be picky about what I eat. Like there's definitely things that my stomach has no interest in right now. Mm-hmm. But like I can eat volume where like on Monday, it didn't matter. Like I couldn't eat much of anything. But so Monday, slept in, like you said, we went out to breakfast and I thought I was totally fine. And I got like through 2 pancakes and I was like, okay, I'm full. So like clearly I'm still not 100%. I took him out to Kama Boardwalk, and honestly, it was pretty underwhelming. And then we got barbecue and called it a night. So it was not. I think what I would say is we did less running around than I would have done fully healthy, but I definitely didn't like shut things down totally. And then on Tuesday, he went to the zoo while I was at work. Then we walked around the mall because I live next to one of the largest malls in the country. Mm-hmm. Went out to a bar, got 1 drink, and then came home and played video games. I would say we did a little less than I would have done normally. But to be honest with you, man, like stomach bug, right?
Yeah.
Like I needed to be within like running distance of a bathroom mm-hmm. at all times. And that was like, I'm not joking, something that was consciously on my mind. Like, where do we stop?
Did you have the poops a lot?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't eat without like needing a bathroom shortly.
See, so that's rough. That's rough. Like you got to get an adult sized diaper if you're going out someplace, just in case. I mean, you got to protect yourself.
I was fine, but it was, it was tough. And I didn't know what the answer is because I don't know that I agree with you. Like, I felt like I had to, but I actually think in the reverse role, if I went to visit somebody and they were sick, and maybe it's different because I don't feel I need to see the city, I would say, dude, like, let's just not even leave.
Right.
Like, you're sick. You don't owe it to me to make, like, because when you're sick, you need to rest. Like, you don't owe it to me to make yourself more sick.
But that's you as the friend, not you as the host. So you as the friend, you have the obligation or you have the ability to say that to the host. So if he said that to you, then at that point you're like, great, thanks, I really appreciate it. Let's just stay in. Let's play video games. You don't owe
anybody anything.
You got to realize he flew cross country to come see you. I feel like you owe him a little bit.
He's got to realize I'm freaking sick.
I mean,
102 is when a fever starts getting serious.
And here's the thing: if he was a better friend, he'd be like, "Hey, I realize you're sick. We don't got to go out. It's okay. I'm calling you both out here. You both are bad friends to each other."
He never said that, but I also think like it was weird, Stroz, because really Sunday night was a little rough. When we got back Sunday night, it was a little rough. But the rest of the week, like I kept thinking I was fine. And Tuesday, what did we get Tuesday for food? You know what? Tuesday I ate fried chicken. I was like, cool. My stomach let me eat fried chicken. So like clearly I've come a long way.
I love how you're a daredevil with it. Like I'm gonna go eat tacos. Did you eat like out of a taco stand, or did you go to one of the good restaurants down there?
To be honest with you, we went to a sports bar, and I had every intention of getting chicken wings. But I could tell that like they didn't sound good. And if chicken wings don't sound good to me, like that's
how you know you're sick.
So I was like, okay, I got chicken tacos, thinking like my stomach will be able to handle chicken tacos.
I love it. I love how you just roll the dice. You're like, cool, give me fried chicken, the greasiest one you got.
No, but
I'm gonna give it a shot.
I was clearly doing a lot better.
You basically have a salad shooter coming out your beehole, just splattering everything with brown paint. By the way, if ND is listening, to this, tell ND I said hello.
I didn't hear what you said, and I don't need to. I think we did a good job having this conversation without getting disgusting until a minute and a half ago, and I don't know why that was necessary.
That's what I do. I mean, look, I don't think it's being disgusting. I think it's an accurate conversation. I mean, you had basically salad shooter.
So let's stop. There's no one wants to listen to it.
It basically goes in and gets shot back out the other end.
But I was curious what people think because
let me ask you this. Did you have a really good time with seeing your buddy and showing him around, even though you were kind of ill?
I had fun. I was happy he was here, but completely, genuinely, honestly, I'd rather not done as much.
I got you.
That
makes sense.
I believe the reason I'm still not 100% is because I overexerted myself the last couple of days.
I got you. How was that Houston Texan game though?
It was fine.
Yeah.
I mean, it is what it is. It's the environment's not the same without people there. That's for sure. I mean, they only had like 13,000 people there. We're not sitting near anybody, which is kind of nice when you're there and you know what's going on. The game didn't matter, so it was something to do, is what I would call. Okay. If they were in the middle of a playoff hunt, I think it would have been a lot more fun.
That makes sense.
So one more time, I'm curious. If a friend comes to visit you and you're sick, do you think it is your responsibility to brave through it and show them around? I'm curious before we wrap this up, Stroz. So the 102 fever, like I didn't have any fever at all on Monday or Tuesday. If I have the 102 fever on Monday, you don't think it's my responsibility, right?
No, if you have the 102 fever, it's best that you stay home.
Okay. I mean, I wouldn't even think it's a discussion then.
Yeah.
The reason through it is because I felt capable. 102 is like, nah, man.
Exactly. 102 fever, especially with everything going on right now, I think
it's irresponsible to everybody else.
Exactly. You owe it to everybody else to not put yourself in that spot or to risk anybody.
I did have someone comment to me that when I mentioned I was sick that you shouldn't be going out, and that's a fair criticism. The only thing I would say is when you look at the symptoms I had and the symptoms I didn't, I feel pretty good. I didn't lose smell. I didn't lose taste. I didn't have a cough. I didn't have any trouble breathing. I didn't have any fatigue. I had fatigue while I had a fever. The moment the fever was gone, fatigue was gone. I didn't have any body aches. Like the things that come with COVID, I didn't have. So I feel pretty good about that. And I also got better so dramatically. Like it was like Sunday around 3 feeling great. By Tuesday at like noon, I was starting to do a lot better. But I was curious to hear your thoughts. talk about responsible, irresponsible. Michigan's thinking about bringing back Jim Harbaugh.
Nice segue. Look at you. Look at those radio chops, baby.
Well, I mean, we've had the conversation on this show that it felt like Harbaugh was a dead man walking.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to imagine them saying they'd be interested in bringing him back at a pay cut is them saying, please leave on your own. But it's not formally saying, get the hell out of here. And I'm curious for you more than me, because I'm a casual Michigan fan. I don't know if anything is unforgivable for me, but would bringing back Jim Harbaugh be unforgivable? And unforgivable doesn't mean you would never root for Michigan again, but it means you are out. Like, you are done with them for the foreseeable future.
And I'm glad you put foreseeable future, because this is how you would end up getting me back in, right? All of a sudden it clicks, right? It's like a Dabo Sweeney
with Harbaugh.
Well, this is what I'm saying. So it's like a Dabo Sweeney type of thing, right? Because remember, Dabo went to Clemson, and it took him a good 7-8 years to really get that program in the direction he wanted, and now they are a perennial power. So, and all of a sudden, it seemed like it just kind of clicked overnight, and it really wasn't that. It was a lot of 7-5 seasons. It was a lot of 8-4, and then I think he had like one really disastrous season where I think he went something like 3-9. But the very next year, he bounced right back. And then all of a sudden, it took off. He got his quarterback in Deshaun Watson, and then next thing you know, they were rolling. So if it was to be a Clemson-like situation or a Dabo Sweeney-like situation, that is how you get me back on. But I don't – this is my thing. Looking at Jim Harbaugh, watching his body language, seeing how he reacts in these press conferences, seeing how he acts on the sideline, I don't know if he's got the heart to do it anymore. I don't know if he wants to be at the University of Michigan. I mean, think about it like this, too. He gets paid handsomely, right? And now the university is going to come to you and say, hey, look, what you've been doing isn't good enough. You fixed and you mended some walls that were kind of torn down and broken. But you are consistently underperforming in the big game, which would be against Ohio State. You basically are a coin flip against Michigan State in the backyard rivalry. And cool, you got a couple wins against Notre Dame, but you're not consistent enough. So what we want to do is, instead of paying, I think he makes like $6 million, instead of giving you $6 million, we're going to give you $3 million. So you're going to cut his pay in half, but we'll heavily incentivize it for you. So if you beat Michigan State, it's an extra $1 million. You beat Ohio State, it's an extra $2 million. And if we play Notre Dame, it's an extra $500,000. And then you can make up all kinds of other stuff if you get to the Big Ten championship game. I don't know if you're Jim Harbaugh. I don't know how you accept that. I mean, he was brought here for one reason and one reason alone.
The same report says at least 5 NFL teams have reached out.
Exactly. And I think this might be one of those things where Michigan and Harbaugh are kind of sitting across from a table with each other, and they've got a revolver sitting in the middle of it, and there's one bullet in that revolver. Who's going to put the bullet to their head and pull the trigger is where I think we're kind of headed with this. And the worst part is they just canceled the Ohio State game. I told you last week that I thought it was good for the university because it pulls them out of having this conversation with the media, because now they get to go into their little yellow submarine and they get to go below the water, and they don't really have to answer a ton of questions, which the more and more we go on with this without having any answers from the university, I think that's kind of telling you which direction they might be heading. He might not be coming back.
I just hearing that it's a possibility is crazy. And I look at it, honestly, Stroz, I don't see the Dabo thing. And you're right. I didn't realize how long it took Dabo to get things straight. But Michigan's trended backwards very clearly. This is an embarrassing year. And I do think for U of M, bringing Harbaugh back would be an unforgivable, not for me because I don't care enough, but like if I saw another team of mine do this, if I watched Matt Patricia coach 5 years and then go backwards,
man,
I think I'd be totally checked out. I don't know if I could watch Lions games as long as he was the coach. And that's kind of how if you're a diehard fan and he's back here next year, I don't know how you watch games now. Like you said, look, anybody can be a bandwagon fan. The moment the Red Wings are good again, you're gonna think I was the biggest Red Wings fan for the last decade. But I would have zero belief that was even in the realm of possibility. And so I just thought it was so crazy when I read that. and I think it was last week, maybe it was 2 weeks ago, I said, I kind of hate that it's gotten here with Harbaugh because I would like there to be an appreciation for him because he did get Michigan to a place they hadn't been in a little while. And a little while, even if it's only the Lloyd Carr era, like the Lloyd Carr era was a hell of a lot more fun than the Rich Rod or Brady Hoke era, and he got them back there. So I wanted there to be an appreciation for him, and I hated that this season had kind of set that back. Stroz, if he's back here, there's a chance his legacy becomes the man who Michigan couldn't get rid of.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would hate to see it for both sides. I really would.
The thing about it, too, is this was one of those seasons where if you could have just got it right, just a little bit, it set you up pretty well because it was an abbreviated season. You didn't have to do a whole ton. COVID could have did some of your heavy lifting for you, right? I mean, if the shoes were reversed, right, and Michigan was 5-0 headed to the Ohio State game, and all of a sudden Ohio State came down with all these COVID symptoms similar to Michigan, right? So if the shoes were on the different feet, you'd be going to play in the Big Ten championship game. If you would have won that, you'd be going to arguably you could be going to the national championship playoff. So like it all set up, and like you said, they just regressed so much.
You almost got a cheap trip to the Big Ten.
Exactly.
But
and you regressed so much.
Anything this year, you were terrible.
Mm-hmm. And like I don't even know if we're any closer to figuring out who the hell the quarterback is for next year. Even if you wanted to use this season as a trial run for next year, who the hell is your quarterback? Is it Joe Milton? I don't think so. Is it McNamara? I'm not sure.
Honestly, this felt like a training camp.
Yeah.
This was a training camp for next year where nobody clearly sealed it. Mm-hmm. And you go into another training camp next year and still try to figure it out.
Exactly. This season was such a miss by him, by this staff, that if he does come back, right? So if he does accept that, because he doesn't want to leave, and Michigan doesn't know how to get rid of him, right? So if he does come back, I think there has to be heavily worded verbiage in this offer, in these discussions, where he has to basically gut this staff. Like this staff is like on the defensive side of the ball is a complete mess. Don Brown's defense isn't good. Like the formula's out there on how to beat them, and everybody has it, and everybody utilizes it against them. And like honestly, the way I seen the Ohio State game playing out, I figured the final score would be something like 63-14. Like that's not good enough, man. That's embarrassing. And the only reason it would have ended at 63 is because they ran out of time. I mean, Ryan Day was coming in here to hang 100 on you, and he wasn't leaving until he got damn close to it. Like you stood no chance. You've seen what the hell their second and third stringers did against Michigan State. Like Ohio State has a program, and that's what you were built here to develop and to bring, and you have missed wildly.
So you don't think it's really in play that he comes back?
I don't think so. I don't know how you come back after this. I don't know if he wants to even be here. That's my big thing too.
I see. The thing is, I think I find myself thinking the same thing. Mm-hmm. It's just you read a report like that, like people here ask me to try and gauge how on the hot seat is Jim Harbaugh. I think within the last week and a half asked whose seat's hotter, Tom Herman's or Jim Harbaugh's, and I said Jim Harbaugh's, and there was some surprise here that was my answer, but I was so adamant. We've talked like we both felt like he was a dead man walking. So to read that they have even the openness of bringing him back. Let's not say the interest, because they want to give him a pay cut. But even the openness at the idea of him being back was so baffling to me that the word that came to mind was unforgivable.
Yeah. And I think it would be. If you're a diehard Michigan fan, how do you bring him back?
Next year, are you watching that game?
No. Like, here's the thing. I have so much for this football team as it is because of how this season's played out. I'd have even less interest next year. Like, you would have to do something remarkable to get me to even want to schedule you into my Saturday to watch you get either shellacked or try to beat somebody. So no, I'm out.
All right, that was simple.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't have a lot. I mean,
no, there's nothing wrong with it. It's been a good episode. I think we're on the same page here. I think we've been more on the same page this episode than in a long time. We disagreed a little bit on the middle, but no, I don't know how you could do it. I think it would be bringing back Matt Millen bad. You've talked about this Lions regime being Matt Millen bad. Jim Harbaugh coming back, which is freaking insane to say because he brought them to a different level. Bringing him back after a 2-4 season, this deep into his tenure, would be Matt Millen bad.
because the only thing that sells you on Jim Harbaugh is his ability to not have terrible seasons. Jim Harbaugh is your coach today because at the very least you expected him to win 8 games, you know? And when you go 2-4, that ability. So that's going to do it for this episode. Again, I'm super excited. Sometime in the next couple of weeks, we're going to have Stroz's girlfriend on to relive some of our all-time greatest segments. Are we allowed to at all discuss what we think they could be, or does that skew the results?
Oh no, I think we could do that. So this is what I would say. Let's so trying to work around her schedule, right? And I think once we get a day nailed down, I think the show before we give our top 5 of what it could be.
That sounds good. So we're going to do a lot of reliving in the next few weeks. I'm looking forward to